Here's something I want adult dancers to hear clearly. If your feet are feeling weak, crampy, unstable, or unreliable, it's not because you're bad at ballet. You just haven't had the training necessary to get your feet ready to dance. Many adult dancers are afraid of injuring their feet, collapsing in releve, sickling, or looking awkward in center when their feet can't quite keep up. And because of that fear, they tend to either overgrip or relax their feet entirely and stop trusting them. So today we're going to fix that, not by pointing harder, but by understanding how the foot actually works and how adult dancers should be training it. Adult dancers usually fall into one of two groups. The gripper, you either claw your toes or squeeze your calves and hope your foot behaves, or the avoider, you soften everything, undercommit, and never really push through the foot. But here's the thing, both of them come from the same place, a lack of trust. You see, most adult dancers didn't grow up spending hours in class, jumping, landing, rolling through the foot, developing that connection. And so the nervous system never really learned this is safe. So if you've ever felt foot cramps in releve, shaky balance in turns, fear of pushing off for jumps, comment feet below because you're exactly who this video is for. So let's simplify the alignment of the foot without dumbing it down. Your foot needs to move through multiple different pathways in ballet in order for you to be able to dance properly. Main one, plantar flexing or pointing the foot. Then we have dorsiflexion, where we would be flexing that foot. Often we'll get that in a plie. We need to know how to pronate and supinate so that we actually find our neutral position in between those two. And we especially need to know how to evert the ankle, not invert, so that we're not sickling, but actually winging our foot when we're pointing. Of course, it's also important that when we're landing, we can absorb force through our feet so that they're nice and strong to protect our landings, but also strong enough that when we're up on releve, they're not losing support and rolling out to the outside, potentially damaging our ankles. Because we're so often told that we need to just point our feet, adult dancers generally only train plantar flexion. Ballet asks the foot to change roles constantly. We need to be able to soften our feet into a plie, but then also create nice, strong, rigid lines in our pointed foot. We need to be able to go from mobile to stable, expressive to supportive. And if you're only training your foot to point without actually working through the foot, then it's going to panic everywhere else. And panic shows up as gripping, shaking, and avoidance. Many adult dancers will overstretch their feet. They'll try and point them all the time. And then they'll do countless releves, often in externally rotated positions, without a lot of articulation working through the foot. And then they start to wonder why maybe their arch is collapsing, why their toes are pointing instead of their ankles, and why after that their ankle is feeling unstable. The truth is, you don't fully own a position unless you can move through it slowly, which is why battement tendu is going to be your number one key to improving your foot articulation. But this is where adult dancers actually have an advantage because they have patience and awareness. The first key you're going to try and unlock is going over to a bar, looking at yourself in the mirror, working through demi-point, pointing the foot, coming back through demi-point, and then closing into first. And you're going to do that 10 times on each side so that your foot develops the understanding of articulating through the ball of the foot and then returning through the ball of the foot in our ton. It's not just about pressure, it's about applying pressure in the right places for the right result. So here are the areas that you need to be strengthening as an adult dancer in order to improve your feet for your ballet. We need to be working on the intrinsic foot muscles, all of the small muscles that go in between the bones and help to develop stability and control of the joints in our feet. From there, we need to start to connect the toe flexors and extensors. So making sure that our toes are working just in that range for strong push-offs and controlled landings. Your FHL, your flexor hallucis longus, is absolutely crucial here because it's going to control your big toe for releve and turns, and especially for point, rising from demi-point up to point. Your soleus, which is part of your calf and sits underneath your Achilles, is going to help with endurance and stability, and your anterior tibialis to help with deceleration and also control of dorsiflexion in things like plies, which in turn will help your landings as well. And if you're saying to yourself, I understand some of these things and I feel like I have okay flexibility and maybe even decent awareness, perhaps it's not that. Perhaps it's your coordination between these systems that's actually holding you back. So maybe the goal isn't force, but actually communication. Sometimes this resistance band can get a bad rap. And I know in the past that I've talked about how I don't really like it for certain types of exercises. But when it comes to the foot, it can often provide just the right amount of resistance to develop the right coordination and communication in our feet. So one of my first exercises that I suggest that you do on a daily basis, and this is more for articulation and coordination than it is for just pointing and flexing, is to start by wrapping this TheraBand or any type of resistance band around your foot, flexing your foot and stretching your knee. Sit nice and tall, create resistance by pulling on the band, and then you're going to plantar flex or point your ankle. Then you're going to point your toes, flex your toes, and then flex your ankle. You want to go nice and slow. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So we're taking a full 8 counts to go through the entire range of motion. What's really important here is that when you get to the point where you're about to point your toes, you don't just crunch your toes over, but you try and reach them as far away from you as possible, and then reach them back out as far as possible as they flex before flexing your ankle again. This exercise is excellent for teaching your foot that movement is safe and also how we should be articulating our foot in our tendus. If you're feeling any cramping, go a little bit slower or go with a lighter weight as your nervous system adapts and learns that the movement is safe. Toe control is also massively important. And so working on lowering our toes independently, almost thinking like you would with your fingers, working from outside to inside is going to help to develop control and understanding of how your toes work. Think of it like rolling your fingers on a table and making that little sound as you go. This is going to help to create that mobile control in your toes so that your toes have the articulation they need to support your dancing. Another exercise you can do is grab a towel, sit on a chair, and lay the towel out in front of you. You're going to place just from your toes forward onto the towel, and then you're going to pull the towel towards you, not by crunching your toes, but by doming your arch. You're going to gently lift the arch without curling the toes, and gradually pull the towel closer to you. Go until the towel has come all the way underneath your foot, and then repeat on the other side. This is a subtle and very small movement, but it's incredibly powerful. And it's exactly what's going to give you as an adult dancer the confidence you need in releve and balance. Our next exercise is a flexor hallucis longus calf raise. So you're going to place your hands against a wall, step your feet back, and rise as high as you possibly can, keeping pressure through your big toe, and then slowly lowering back down. Think 2 seconds rise, 3 seconds down. 3, 2, 1. Aim to go for 25 repetitions. And then if that seems too easy, start to build on one foot. If you can't quite do 25 repetitions in one go on one foot, go to what your maximum is on your first foot, preferably your weaker foot. Swap to your other side, go up to that number, and then swap back and keep swapping between feet until you hit 25 slow controlled reps on each foot. This exercise is going to support your releve. It's going to make sure that your toes stay strong, and it will also help you eventually with stability in your turns and for point preparation if that's something you're wanting to do. Because the FHL has to be super strong to be able to rise from demi-point up to point and come back to you. All of this being said, guys, we often train our calf raises with a straight knee, which means that our soleus, the muscle that actually helps our foot to point when our knee is bent, is not getting a lot of love. So we need to make sure that we're developing that as well so that our stability continues in other things. What you want to do is bend your knees, keeping your knees bent. You're going to rise up as high as you possibly can and then slowly come back down, creating pressure as you reverse from that rise. Rising up and then pressuring your foot back down into the floor. We do something similar like this in our grand pliés if you do your grand plié correctly. So as I get to the base of my grand plié, instead of just rising, come back up and letting my heels drop naturally, from here I want to push my heel back down into the floor to create the return to straight. By combining 25 of those bent knee calf raises or soleus calf raises together with the proper movement of grand plié, you'll find that your legs get a lot stronger for your landings. So far, we've done a lot of exercises where we're working on the plantar flexion of the ankles. We also need to train our anterior tibialis, which is going to help to support us in deceleration, in landings, and also to engage our ankles' strength while we're doing our grand pliés or pliés at the bar. So training that anterior tibialis by leaning against a wall, slightly forward with your upper body, flexing so your feet come up towards the ceiling, and then slowly lowering back down to the ground. Think up 1, down 2, 3, 4. Aim for 25 repetitions to thoroughly engage your anterior tibialis and make sure that you're developing that strength over time. Here's some red flags you really want to be looking out for when you're dancing if you're feeling this in your feet. If you're dancing and your toes are doing all of the pointing, instead of getting through that full articulation through the demi-point, point, demi-point back, and working through your ankle, then potentially your ankle doesn't have the mobility or the strength to support your foot. Another one is arch collapse. If you're pronating, you'll find that your foot goes flatter onto the floor than if you're finding that neutral alignment of your foot. We also don't want to supinate to the outside because that's going to put excess stress on the outside of the ankle and potentially cause you to rise up incorrectly, putting your ankle at risk of rolling. If you're dancing, jumping, rising, or turning, and suddenly you start to feel pain instead of fatigue, that's a red flag that we really want to pay attention to. A stabbing, shooting pain, dull ache in the bone, as opposed to fatigue, maybe just from working your feet, is something we absolutely should be paying attention to and resting if that pain is taking over. And if it gets to the point where you're favoring one side and avoiding weight bearing, then definitely go and see a doctor or a physio to make sure that you're not injured. None of these things mean failure. They mean you either need to fully rest and take time off, or that your foot is asking for clearer, slower, more comprehensive training to ensure it's strong enough to handle your dance load. Strong feet in dance come from training and many years of practice. And so when you're getting into your training, make sure that you're taking the time necessary to ensure your feet are working properly through the right ranges of motion and that you're not injuring yourself. When you start implementing these exercises, you might have a little bit more soreness. You might find that your ankles and your feet don't feel as strong initially in class, and then over time, they start to get stronger. That's because you're training new nervous system pathways and your body is adapting. Stay consistent, embrace the process with patience, and you'll get there in the end. Remember your fundamentals of plantar flexion, dorsiflexion, inversion, eversion, pronation, neutral, and supination, and how to work all of those areas to strengthen your ankles for support, and your feet will get much stronger for dance. Remember, guys, your best years of dancing are ahead of you, so keep practicing for many more years.